I'll never understand how you can work with somebody on a daily basis and not know how to communicate with them. The inherent nature of sales is competition. You have to know how to breed healthy competition, how to pull it out of your salespeople without breeding any sort of contempt. Now, this age-old problem is rarely solved because the solution is viewed in such a linear fashion. It's almost binary in the way in which we look for how to solve it. You have to understand what genuinely motivates people. But unfortunately, the only way that we've ever been able to solve it, or that we look to solve it, is by trying to show salespeople how much money they can make or how they stack up compared to their peers. That's exactly typically how you breed contempt. A salesperson's natural tendencies to want to move on a deal, to stress the action, if you will, largely rely on their cognitive functions. It rarely has anything to do with intrinsic or extrinsic motivators. When a salesperson is moving slowly through a deal, they're asking questions that may seem immaterial. A lot of times, our natural tendencies is to classify them as lazy, or perhaps they don't know what they're doing. But usually we say that, oh well, this person just doesn't have that killer instinct. The problem is that's not always the case. While yes, there are lots of poor salespeople that are lazy, could there potentially be an alternative reason? What if they want to be successful, but their natural tendencies is to strategize, to systematize, to genuinely understand rather than to just move on a deal right away? Now you know they should look to simplify, adapt, and innovate, but they don't. But that's a function of their cognitive abilities. Now that's not to say that you can't change it, but the important part is to first understand how they function so that you can build fail-safes to ensure that they're operating in their best self, so they don't move too slowly and lose the deal in the process. The second reason why most sales teams fail to achieve their full potential is because they don't function as a team. You see this example in Formula One all the time. You tell two very high-functioning individuals what their goal is, you tell them that they're on a team, but at the end of the day, they're not on a team. One person will win, one person will lose, yet they're both supposed to work together. This is why it never works out. You always see the infighting inside of Formula One. Same way, you're not going to be able to have two salespeople be the top earning rep. And when you're telling them that that's what they have to do, they have to be the #1 rep on the leaderboard, you're telling everyone to effectively fight against each other. So this notion of let's work together and help each other, it's illogical. It ignores the obvious. The reason why we're left fighting the same battle is because of the structure we've created. It's a hierarchy based on merit. Now that's further reinforced with a graduated pay scale. The more you sell, the more you make. Now, I'm not advocating for any participation trophies or even paying everyone the same. That's going to have an even larger and disastrous effect. I'm all for eat what you kill. There are no moral victories, and there really can only be one winner. Which is why I think there's a better way. We want to create a system that rewards top performers. We want to look to incentivize the behaviors that we want, whether it be from an individual or a team standpoint. Now, of course, paying commission commensurate to revenue sold is the first part, but then look to leave the money there. It's important to understand that each individual on your team is motivated by something different. Remember, money is a soft motivator. It's only enough until it's enough. And then the increase in earnings doesn't always translate to the linear increase in sales. So pay your people enough to make sure that earnings is not a problem. Pay them enough where they're just happy, but that's not going to be everything. Because the more you pay, the more they're going to want, because the money is ultimately filling a hole left by their affective desires. Money is not an intrinsic motivator. The root cause could be stability, achievement, recognition, or freedom. It could be a whole host of different things, but it's important to understand the why behind why your team does what they do. It's important to understand their affective desires, because that's ultimately how you're going to trigger them to want to actually move forward. Simply by telling them you're a team and that you need to work together, it's not going to do anyone any good. High-functioning sales teams are notorious for having toxic cultures. The reason is simply because the right behavior per team member isn't reinforced properly. Work styles and desires are important to understand for each individual so you can speak to them at a one-to-one level. The structure is rarely the problem. Competition, pay for performance, leaderboards, quotas, All of that is a part of sales. Removing those core fundamentals of accountability and transparency, that's going in the wrong direction. Rather, keeping such motivating factors, but applying them in the right lens and positioning each individual on your team, that's what will truly allow your team to succeed without running any interference.